of you know Norse mythology, you've seen it everywhere from the books to the movies. There isn't a fantasy series that doesn't have dwarves, that doesn't have elves, or at least some elements from Norse mythology. However, what is really cool about The Witcher is that it has a lot of Slavic mythology. In my opinion, there really isn't a more popular, more mainstream series that features Slavic mythology that is generally very obscure and unknown. And honestly, The Witcher does a really good job of bringing these creatures, these monsters, these deities into life. Now, you have some beings like the Leshen, which are almost an exact copy. You have the Crones, which are like a mix between Slavic mythology and various other European mythologies. So let us cover a few of the most interesting ones that you guys have seen in the Netflix series or within the game that you have ran across them, and what roots do they have in Slavic mythology. The Leshens are one of the most iconic beings in the game. You guys have seen them everywhere. They generally have wolves, they can turn into these crows, and they're like these forest beings. Now, what is super interesting is that in fact they're quite similar to the Slavic mythology. They're almost an exact copy. Although in the game they're a bit more monsters. In the Slavic mythology there's something more akin to protectors of the forest, like these forest spirits. Generally in Slavic mythology they're called the leshys, lesovoi, lesniks. All of it comes down to the Slavic word les, which in most Slavic languages means forest. They're seen as these tall men that really resemble trees. If you guys have seen Lord of the Rings, you know something akin to Ents. They're tall, they have like grass-like beard, their arms are so long they look like trees. And what is super interesting about them, when they're close to the center of the forest, they are huge, they're very tree-like and gigantic, but as they get further and further away from the center and they reach the edges of the forest, they can be as small as leaves. In Slavic mythology, they're known as something as pranksters. They can kind of mislead you and get you lost deeper in the forest, and they can also tickle people to death. However, they're mainly known as the protectors of the forest, so how you treat the forest, that is how they treat you. They have a very special bond with wolves, with bears, with crows, and generally they're known to be responsible for migrations of animals. So obviously you can see the very obvious connections to The Witcher as they have that. However, what is a little bit different is that in-game they're more of like a monster version. They're not really nice in Slavic mythology either, but here they're really just the sinister part. However, generally they're seen as the protectors, the forest deities of Slavic mythology, and they're very well done within The Witcher. The drowners are like these annoying little pests within The Witcher 3. You have seen them, they really gang up on you, they're cowardly, they run away, and they are almost always near bodies of water. Some people in the lore say that they're drowned men, like bad men that died near the water, but generally the lore, even though it is a bit obscure, says that they're a post-conjunction relic, so they arrived to the world at some point. What is super interesting though, they're obviously based on Slavic mythology, they're called Vodniks, Vodjanoi, but in The Witcher they're also called Vodniks. There is a different name that they have. In Slavic mythology they're known as the Vodjanoi, the Vodjaniks, the Vodniks. All of these are really related to the Slavic word voda, which means water, and they are definitely a bit different. They aren't the same monsters that they are in the game. There's something akin to like water spirits, so how you have Leshens as the forest spirits, you have the Vodniks as the water spirits. In mainly Eastern Slavic mythology, they are these old men with frog faces, they got fish scales, like how you would imagine a person that lives in the water. They have these burning eyes, quite sinister. However, as I said, they're sort of spirits, so fishermen would make sacrifices to them. They have a Tsar Vodjanik, and local drownings are usually said to be their doing. In Czech, Slovak, and Slovene mythology, they are a little bit different from the Eastern Slavic mythologies. They can be good, they can be bad spirits. They also mainly live in rivers and ponds, and there are like these lakes where you know the Vodjanoi, the Vodniks live, that you really don't want to swim in. So in The Witcher, they are mainly these monsters. In the Slavic mythology, they're more like water spirits, but I would say it was really cool from The Witcher to add these guys into the game. So, Lady Midday, or poludnitsa, one of the most iconic Slavic mythological beings. In The Witcher, they're actually physically sort of very similar, although they're kind of done quite differently. In the game, they are like these women that died before their wedding, they died a violent death, and they're generally cursed beings. They stay near the place of their death, they are chaotic, they really attack everyone, and they can't really be defeated, usually, unless you lift the curse. However, despite the similarities, in Slavic mythologies, these are generally demons, noon demons. In English, they're known as noonwraiths, Lady Midday. In Slavic languages, they're generally known as poludnitsa. Poludnitsa, or just like these various regional versions of the name, but usually it's just poludnitsa. This means half day, so obviously noon, and noonwraith. Now, what is interesting in Slavic mythologies, these poludnitsas, they haunt people that work in the fields during the day, and they actually do look kind of similar. They're like these young women in like white dresses that have their skin burned from the sun. They carry a scythe. However, they're not really as chaotic as in the game. They don't really attack you outright, although they can also do that. What they generally do is they approach you, they ask you these like riddles, very difficult questions, and if you can't answer them, yeah, you're kind of screwed. They just cut off your head. They can definitely also be chaotic, but generally these are like deities, these are like demons, so despite the similarities in the name, I would say The Witcher pulled them off quite well, at least from the lore perspective, because you needed to lift these curses and do all these things in the game. So, Baba Yaga, this is literally the most iconic Slavic mythology figure. Now, in the Netflix series, they actually pulled off Baba Yaga a bit more than they did in the game. This is Voleth Meir. It is actually more similar to the Slavic mythology. However, the Crones in The Witcher, while they were done really well, they're kind of a mix of the regional versions of Baba Yaga and also some other European myths, such as the Sisters of Fate, and overall, it is a super interesting story. So, mainly in Eastern Slavic countries, you have Baba Yaga. In Western Slavic countries, you generally have Baba. In ex-Yugoslav region, you have Baba Roga. In Bulgarian, you have Gorska Majka. So these are all like these various versions of this mythological figure, although they're not actually the same. They're kind of different. They have different places where they live. They have different characteristics. Now, Baba Yaga is like this weird figure. I mean, she generally lives in the middle of the forest in a house on chicken legs, and she can kind of be altruistic, but I mean, she has a fence of human bones. She's definitely not nice, and there are a lot of these cannibalistic and dark themes. However, what is really interesting in Slavic mythology is that despite these dark themes and her obviously not being a good character, no one is actually eaten and everyone actually escapes. Now, Voleth Meir is actually more similar to this, if you have seen her in the Netflix series, because she is in a house on chicken legs, and even that hot thing is actually a thing that is said in the Slavic mythological stories. However, the Crones, in my opinion, are a super well done character. They're based on the regional versions of Baba Yaga, so you have some aspects of Baba Roga, you have some aspects of Baba Yaga. However, what is super cool about them is that they're also a mix of the Sisters of Fate, and this is a mythological story that is found pretty much in all European mythology. You have it in Norse mythology, you have it in Greek, you have it in Roman, and these Sisters of Fate are like three sisters, sort of like these deities that are above deities, and they ensure that both deities and mortals live their fate according to the laws of nature. Now, Baba Yaga is also sort of like a deity figure, sort of like the earth goddess, as you had obviously seen in the game. However, what is also super interesting about them that you might have seen is that they mix them like their actual looks. You have the Brewess that has the basket on her head and this chain around her neck. All of these descriptions are based on how the witches were killed in medieval times. So the Brewess and the chain, that is usually they would drown witches in the water. You then have the Weewess, with the noose on her neck, which is obviously from the hanging, how they hanged witches in the past. Now the Wispess, in my opinion, is the most interesting one. You have Baba Yaga that generally lives in this hut in a forest, deep in the forest, but Baba Roga lives in a cave, and Wispess is based on her because she lived in a cave in Toussaint, and a knight actually came and burned her, so she was burned alive. She survived this burning, which obviously signifies that they burned witches in the past, as all of you guys know. So in my opinion, we have Voleth Meir, we have the Crones that are really a good interpretation of these regional differences of Slavic mythology with Baba Roga, Baba, Baba Yaga, and all of them are really done well in my opinion. Now these are just a few of the myths. There's like twice as much that I can cover, so if you guys are interested, do let me know. I can make more of these videos like this. So thank you for watching, let me know what you guys think, and subscribe to the channel for more videos. See you next time!